He has a vision for state taxes, and I respect that vision. We're talking about the ability of the people in New York City to tax ourselves. This is about city taxes, not state taxes.
And that, of course, the new mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, talking pre-K funding, and the governor today, as they said, little alpha male jostling back and forth. Yes, I took the line, Richard. Now, I got the question after reports surfaced from Albany this weekend that Cuomo was not only embracing the idea of universal pre-K, not just in the city, but across the state, but as the headline spells out, he was seeking to preempt the mayor in the process. De Blasio was asked specifically about Cuomo's intentions and his plans.
With all due respect to my colleagues in the media, we don't accept reports in the media as the same as what the governor is going to say. The governor has not said that to me. I have no verification that that's what he's going to propose.
Okay, so there you get, Dominic, that they're not going to hug it out just yet. They're still feeling each other out who's got more juice, and certainly the mayor doesn't have an election for a while here, and the governor's got one next year, and they've got their own political maybe ambitions. And one of the things that I want to talk about is you can't pick up papers without people talking about New York City now as being the incubator, about the test case for progressives. And I keep hearing people say, well, let's see how de Blasio does in New York City. If you can sell the idea of a tale of two cities, of income inequality, and make that work. I'll get to the tone of it in a minute. But can this play not just in the 5 boroughs and beyond? And do you think de Blasio cares?
It can, in terms of the progressive message from the new mayor, it can play, but the 800-pound gorilla in the room is the governor of the state. And I don't think a brand new mayor wants to go to war with this governor who's very popular. So right now we're looking at a situation, I don't know if I can borrow your phrase from the commercial break. I'm only joking. But you're looking at a mayor and a governor where they're feeling each other out right now. I don't know who's going to win this one, but I don't think it's going to be Governor Cuomo that loses the battle.
They like each other, and there's no reason for them to seek conflict. On the other hand, there's the irresistible object and the immovable object and the irresistible force. Yeah. They cannot coexist philosophically and on economic policy. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose.
Okay, now forgetting for a moment whether they like or hate each other at the end of the day, this idea that progressives had a trial run, if you will, with the Occupy movement, that we'll debate this ad nauseum, went off the rails a little bit at the end, I'll argue. It seems a lot of people are dissatisfied that Democrats nationally aren't adopting a more progressive tone, and they see in Bill de Blasio maybe the sum of all their hopes. Do you think that he not only knows this, but will play to an audience beyond just the immediate 5 boroughs?
Of course he knows it. He ran for mayor on that basis, and he knocked the stuffing out of everybody. Will he continue to do that? Sure. You dance with them that brought you, and that's what brought him. He also happens to believe it, but he does have to turn it into successful policies that increase incomes and make the city a fairer place. That's the test, not the political strategy.
Okay, and I think, Jeannie, when you look at the numbers, on a lot of singular issues and on a macro, people do think there's too much of a gap between have and have-nots. And we'll be talking about it later in the show. Nationally, people are debating minimum wages. They're talking about the food stamps, the unemployment insurance and stuff. And it's not just one sector feels one way or the other. The majority of Americans think the deck is stacked too hard against the people on the bottom end. But I want to go back for a second to the inauguration that we saw for the New York City mayor and some of the language on there. And it's not just the substance, but the style of what came out and whether or not we think this is important or just a one-day, maybe, let's say, a rough launch here. Take a look. Again, this was the inauguration of Bill de Blasio.
We live in a gilded age of inequality where decrepit homeless shelters and housing developments stand in the neglected shadow of gleaming multi-million-dollar condos.
Our deeply Dickensian justice system.
The plantation called New York City.
Classism. No more brownstones and brown skin playing tug of war.
Okay. The point was, he was asked later, Mayor de Blasio, he didn't say anything overly inflammatory on the stage, but when asked about some of the stuff that was said, Letitia James went way over the top on a few of the things, with the mayor sitting right there, whether you like him or not. For 12 years, he was a servant of the city here, and I thought it was bad form, to put it politely. De Blasio said he had no problem with anything that was said on the stage, and he seemed to be about the only one. To me, I get pushing and pitching and to say we got to level the playing field more, but there was a demonization of the upper income earners in New York City, and I don't know if you get more with a stick than you will with a carrot in some cases here. It certainly came across that way. Am I reading too much into this or no?
Well, I think it's important first to say that Bill de Blasio and Bill Clinton both were gracious to Mayor Bloomberg themselves personally in their speeches, and I think that that's been
Bill
forgotten.
Clinton tried to step back from some of the stuff on the stage.
And so
Bill de Blasio did.
Bill de Blasio did thank the mayor, so I think that's important to say because I think he's gotten a bad rap for what Harry Belafonte said, what Tish James said, and other things. You know, I thought the inauguration was in poor taste myself. You know, Mayor Bloomberg, you're absolutely right. The numbers bear out the problem of inequality. It is an enormous problem. Bill de Blasio was right to point it out, and he won on that. That said, here's a guy that took the city from the, 9/11, 12 years, whether you like everything he did or not, the city is in some ways in better shape than it was when he got it. And you don't bash the guy on his way out the door. You welcome the new guy. So, to me, the inauguration was a little bit in bad taste. And I thought that, Bill de Blasio was a little bit coy about whether, in fact, they had vetted the speeches in advance or not, but if you're inviting Harry Belafonte, what you're getting.
You're going to get, right?
Yeah, so you know what you're getting. So that said, maybe it was a last blast at the campaign and he's going to move forward. But the inauguration itself, I thought, was in poor taste. You don't bash somebody on their way out.
Was there a lot of love on the podium when Rudy took over for David Dinkins? Was he saying how wonderful David Dinkins was in his 4 years in office?
It's an issue
was
of
Chris
saying,
Christie doing the same thing about John Corzine?
I don't think it's an issue of saying how wonderful the person was. I think it's any time. If I'm to replace a professor in the classroom, you usually, unless they have done something horrible or something, illegal or mean, you usually, when you're replacing somebody, give credit to them for what they've done.
I think there was some respect from Rudy himself to David Dinkins standing right there, and it wasn't speaker after speaker after speaker.
New York City, a plantation system? I mean, come on.
He was a chaplain, I believe, for the sanitation department. Some of these guys you've never heard of them before, and trust me, you won't. I've never heard of this guy before of a day of my life.
Come on, everybody get a life, will you?
Okay, you thought that was a decent comment to make?
Change is
Richard,
rough.
was that a decent comment to make?
It's not a comment I agree with, but in the context of a city that's had voices that have been unable to get to the podium for 20 years.
Maybe I've been asleep for 12 years, but what voices have been? I've seen a city where Bloomberg has brought people together based on when Rudy,
Tuesdays and
Rudy
Fridays.
wouldn't meet with black leaders.
Wait a minute.
Rudy said they don't like me. I'm not meeting with them.
Are we comparing Bloomberg to Giuliani? You win. If we're talking about forces in the city that are deeply concerned about the way middle class and poor people are treated, it's new, and some of it's had some rough edges. And this is not a Tea Party. Well, maybe it is, on the left. And these are rough-edged, emerging angers and concepts. Maybe it should have been done differently.
I didn't see
Let's
those
move
angers
on.
coming along throughout the years.
One thing I think it's important to keep in mind is, Bill de Blasio coming in from the background he comes in from, it is a very hard transition to go from organizing to governing. And so if you do that, you want to keep those organizing voices in there. And to that extent, you'll see some of this as we go forward because now he's on the other side. And so to that extent, it makes some sense for him to keep the voices and the people that he wants to represent involved. On the other hand, I have to say, I thought it was in poor taste. I mean, I don't think you run an inauguration like that.
But I think there's a bigger question, which is stylistically, okay? And I think there's substance to it too. We know what the play is. He wants there to be more equity, okay? And he wants to put more money into not just programs, but to have more of a leveling, whether it's housing and everything else. I happen to agree with him.
But he also wants different voices being heard. Sometimes those voices don't speak in the way I would speak. That's what happened at the
end of the day, he's the mayor. But it's his inauguration. What comes out of the stage, he's a big boy. He understands. It comes out.
It doesn't always work that way. And also, most importantly, it doesn't matter. What matters is.
Oh, see, this is where I disagree with you. It matters in one thing. If you think it doesn't matter what is said about the financials, wait, time out. If the financial services industry of New York City, if the message from him is,
it's not from him. the message from him was civil and inclusive.
It's his freaking inauguration. Excuse me, did we hold Mitt Romney responsible? Time out. When Clint Eastwood went on that ridiculous rant that he went on, of course we did. And we pointed out to everybody that...
You did. I didn't. It told you a little bit about where the Republican Party is. What happened at the inauguration tells you a little bit about where the Democratic Party in the city is. But it is not... poor taste is not the ultimate sin in politics. Disloyalty, corruption, and not paying attention to the people who got you there.
Too.
Financial services industry isn't going to leave New York because they call them names. They're going to leave because of the bottom line. I mean, it's not.
But if you look at Jim Dwyer's piece in the Times today, they were also misrepresenting facts up there. And you may say that doesn't matter, but you can
I don't say that doesn't matter.
But you can talk to moderate Democrats for whom this starts to be a turnoff. And if I was representing Bill de Blasio, I would say you have to be very careful how you move forward governing versus campaigning.
Getting the facts right is very important. And where they misstated the facts, they ought to be called on it.
Yeah, and Wolfson was right to call them out on that.
Wolfson called me out on the column in the Daily News about whether there were $12 billion in subsidies. The Bloomberg people aren't going away,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Everybody, this wasn't him. It was people at the inauguration where they said things that are wrong, they ought to be criticized. And then we ought to figure out what he's going to do about it.
To quote a certain friend of mine, Pshaw. Coming up next.
Bourgeois is the way it's pronounced.
I'll say it my way, you say it yours. Tomato, tomato. Bishop in check again, or at least the GOP hopes so. They have targeted the Democrat in the upcoming 2014 midterms. So which other races should we be watching this fall? We'll get into that after this.